Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday wake-up class. This morning we're going to talk about the art of the CMA and winning the listing presentation. Let me hit my iPad here to get it on presentation mode. There we go. All right. So, the art of the CMA, preparing, presenting, and winning the listing. As usual with Peak Producers, we talk about habits, attitudes, and skills. That's one of the bases. For those of you who've taken that class, Sharon's nodding her head. You know that they talk about, we teach skills and tools a lot. That's sort of step one. But we also have to develop good habits of using those skills or tools, or else they really don't make a whole lot of good sense for us. And all of those things go in together to help us develop great attitudes towards our business and towards continuous improvement. And continuous improvement is, of course, the key to ongoing success. So today we're going to be talking about the CMA, preparing and winning, and how that fits in with your listing and your listing presentation and serving every seller. So we're going to be talking today mainly about the two-step listing process. I don't know that every market uses the two-step listing process. It's a pretty basic process. For newer agents, I really encourage and recommend that you do the two-step listing process. And actually, frankly, it's really a three-step process, because the first step is usually you get a phone call, whether it's a sign call or a referral from somebody else, and they say, I'm thinking about selling my house. Would you, come and talk to me? So then you've got that first little consultation over the phone where you ask them a lot of questions. One of the most important of which is, why are you moving? That's going to tell you, step one, very quickly, a little bit about what their motivation is. And we're going to talk about that in more detail. Where are you moving to? Because most people, when they move, unless it's a distress situation, and we went through a period where there was a lot of distress situations, there's fewer of those these days, most people move and sell a house because they want to go somewhere else, usually for hopefully a fun reason. We're having more kids, we need a bigger house. Our kids are in college, we want to move downtown into one of those neat condos on Mass Ave. There's usually tied more to where they want to go than just they want to sell the house. So I want to let everybody know that the best marketing plan is pricing the home correctly to begin with. I say that to everybody that I talk with, that I'm going to tell you right up front, the best marketing plan is to price your house correctly right up front. So the key to winning and serving a listing, sort of stepping back a little bit, keep in mind that the real goal is to meet the emotional needs of the client. This is a big deal, selling a house and buying another house. This is very stressful and very emotional. Sellers can be very attached to their houses. Sometimes one seller, if it's a couple, is more attached or less attached than the other. So you've got to figure that out. So your goal is, keep in mind, your overriding goal is to figure out how to meet the emotional needs of the client to make sure that they feel they've been heard. Wow. How do you make people feel they've been heard? You ask them questions. You don't go in and just sit down and start talking. That's not the way to make somebody feel you're heard. So one of the best things to do, first, that consultation phone call, ask a lot of questions. When you go out on the step one of the two-step process, asking more questions as you're walking around and looking at their house so that you can see the details of that. And again, we'll talk in more detail about that. And then your goal is to make every client feel that you, and only you, or best you, can do something to relieve their frustration and anxiety, which means, number one, you care about their frustration and anxiety and recognize that that's a part of the process. So I'm going to take a quick trip down the blueprint road of getting a home sold. We talk about this a lot. I love this. This is something that I talk to people about on that first of the two-step visit, if I do a two-step, as we're walking through the house, after we've sat down and I'm asking the questions, I say, I want to make sure that you understand my approach to this and that you're comfortable with it. I have a 7-step blueprint for getting a home sold. This works so far for me anyway. This has worked like a charm. So number one, because we know that price is usually number one in most sellers' mind, we talk about that right up front. I'm going to do an in-depth market analysis for you, but I'm going to do this and we're going to talk about this last when I come to meet you the next time, if that's okay with you. And the reason is, I know that's the most important thing that you have in mind is, what can I get for my house? How much can I sell it for? But I want to make sure that we talk about that in the overall context of what I'm going to do for you in terms of the services and what the market is saying, so that when we talk about the price, it makes the most sense for you in the context of everything that goes into this pretty complex process and all the things I'm going to be doing. Number two, property enhancement checklist. I love that phrase, a property enhancement checklist. What that really can be termed as is a value enhancement checklist. Obviously, one of the things we're doing in that first walk around is giving some people some thoughts on, oh gosh, you'll want to clean this up or whatever. But in that first walk around, I talk about that at a certain price point, I will bring in at my own cost my stager. And she is marvelous because she will come in and walk through in an hour, hour and a half or so, and walk through and give you a list of how to stage your home. That might include some updates or repairs or something like that, but mainly what it includes is how to make your house look and feel like a model home, which is what the goal, that's the most attractive. That's the thing that people want. If you think about a model home, you go out to any builder and you look in their model home, there's just enough stuff in there to make it feel like a home, but it doesn't overwhelm you with personal effects and things like that. So I do that at my own cost. Why do I do that? Because I know that helps us get the best price and optimize your probability of selling it for the best price at the fastest time. I also use my own professional photographer. I've got a really nice camera and I can take some pretty good pictures, but I'm not a professional photographer. So I have my professional photographer come out and put up a tour for you at a different website, so the tour is there. Believe me, 95% of people start looking for a house online, and although I'm a really good writer, they don't go immediately to the comment section to see what I've written about your house. They go to the pictures, right? So I can't believe some of the things, and if you've been looking online at houses, you probably are saying to yourself, I can't believe some of the horrible pictures that are on there. That's crucial. I pay for, out of my own cost, a professional photographer. Again, this is at a certain price level for you. So that immediately, most agents don't do that. They'll talk about, I'll help you get your house fixed up and I'll take good pictures, but this immediately raises the bar on where you are versus the bulk of the agents out there. Number three, comprehensive marketing and promotion plan. This we talk about a lot. If you were to ask a client, which you should, prospective seller, what's most important to you? What do you want to know about when I come and meet with you? 99% of them are going to say, well, I'd like to know about your marketing plan, because that's what you hear among cocktail party realtors or Sunday school class realtors is, oh, yeah, they had a really good marketing program. They said they got a lot of signs out there and they got billboards and things. That's great. That's very important. We're one of the biggest companies in the world. We get your listings syndicated out everywhere. I will do blah, 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 blah. We have a great marketing program. So you respond to that, obviously, and you talk about the various things you're going to be doing. But that's where most companies stop. So number 4, 5, 6, and 7 are where you can really differentiate yourself. Obviously, number 2 as well. Number 4, you probably hear about, and maybe you've had experiences with realtors who didn't communicate with you. And one of your first questions when you've had that phone consultation was probably, how did you, when you bought this house or if you sold a house before, how was that experience? Tell me how that worked. And many times, because this is the reputation we have, many times people are going to say, well, we never heard from, it was really tough to get out any information from our broker. He didn't communicate with us proactively. So boom. One of the things I pride myself on and I'm set up to do is crystal clear, proactive communication. I'm going to set up weekly a phone call with you. Obviously, if something happens between that time, but let's just say the house is on the market for a week or two and we're getting some showings, but there's been nothing exciting going on. I'm going to update you every week. Would you like me to do that by phone, by email, have coffee together, or by text? What would you like? I'm going to call you up even if nothing has happened to let you know that nothing has happened so that you know that I'm out looking out for your best interest and keeping on top of what's going on here. So number 5, negotiating and structuring the sale. I love this one. My experience and my training, this is where I put money in your pocket. Negotiating and structuring the sale. This is where I put money in my client's pocket. Now, a lot of agents will go out and say, I've sold $8 billion worth of real estate in the last 3 months. I'm the number one salesman. And that's great. That implies that they know how to negotiate. But I guarantee you, 99% of the time, they don't go that next step and say those words. So if you're negotiating or if you're up against somebody who's sold a lot more than you have, and they're talking about their experience but haven't gone to this level, you can help yourself a lot by saying, I've had lots of good training and structuring, in negotiating and structuring the sale, and this is where I put money in your pocket. For example, are you aware that there's 7 different styles of negotiation? I've been trained, and my experience shows me how best to understand and recognize that different style that the other agent may have, and that I can learn from that agent about their client, and that will help us best negotiate to not be fighting against their style, but going with their style. So I know how to deal with somebody who has to win, the king of the hill. I know how to make them feel like they're winning, even when I win for you. So number 6, comprehensive transaction management. A lot of times clients, when we get a purchase agreement signed, they feel that, woo, man, we're good to go. This is great. I can put that money in the bank. We can be moving on to buy that other house. Well, there's a lot that happens between the purchase agreement being finalized and the closing table. There's inspections. There's basically 3 phases of negotiation. There's the inspection. That's another negotiation, and that's why my strength at negotiating and structuring the sale is so important. And then there's the financing, which really gets into appraisals. And appraisals may end up these days, because if the market is going up, appraisals are usually looking backwards, and you may run into a problem with an appraisal. So we got to have another negotiation there. And it's key that your agent, me, doesn't take my eye off the ball. The financing one that I mentioned there, oftentimes agents will tell me they get a call the day before the closing from the buyer, and it turns out that the buyer didn't submit one document, and we're going to have to delay the closing a week. Oh my gosh, what does that do if your seller is buying another house the same day, and that buyer's buying another house, et cetera, and people all down the line have that domino effect? What I do is keep in touch with the buyer's agent, and will even talk with their lender if I'm not getting the full story, and find out and push what's going on, so we don't get into last-minute surprises if there is a hiccup. So comprehensive transaction management, I'm there representing you all the way through. And then number 7, the client appreciation program. I want to make sure that you know that I'm not in this just for a transaction. I get paid, yes, with a commission check, and I so appreciate you working with me. But I want to make sure you recognize that I consider a long-term client. And I want you to know that I'm available for you should any real estate need, so any question about your house, your taxes, your financing, thinking about adding on, you want to know what's under construction in front of the Walmart around the corner, call me. I am your real estate expert, your real estate advisor on an ongoing basis. So I want to know how much I appreciate our relationship and you giving me this business. And this, of course, sets the foundation for a long-term real estate advisor relationship and generating referrals, which is the key. We want to turn every one of our clients into advocates. I know I've gone over that many, many times, but I love this 7-step blueprint, and I really encourage you, first thing out of your mouth, basically, when you're sitting down to talk to somebody, even on that first walkthrough after you've gone through the house, to explain this to people. And you can put this in a form that you can give them if you like as well. So let's move on and now head toward the CMA and talk a little bit about pricing strategies. Obviously, one of the most important things you can do is remember asking questions. And one of the best questions to ask people is, so you're on their first walkthrough, you've looked at the house, you're sitting down briefly, and one of the first things to ask them then is, so tell me, what do you think your house is worth? Some people will be coy and say, oh, I don't know, you're the expert. But I would probe a little deeper. Well, you've decided to sell your house, and I noticed the house down the street sold. Your neighbors there, have you not talked to them? What the house sold for? Just curious. Well, yeah, we did, and it sold for $225, and then that usually gets them going. Well, we think ours is better because we put in new toilet paper holders in all the bathrooms, and they're fake chrome, and so we think we could sell ours for $250. So that's the key, is to get them talking about their house and what they did. Obviously, other questions at this point are, what upgrades have you done? Ideally, if you're dealing with somebody who's bought a house in the last 10 years, I think it should be still on MLS systems. Most MLS systems, I think, keep homes on for 10 years. So you'll be able to see what they paid for it. You'll be able to look at the pictures, et cetera, et cetera. So the key, asking the seller what they think it's worth, and then explain to them that, there's three approaches to pricing, and I'm going to now go back and complete my CMA for you now that I've seen all the details here. And when we come back, I just want to make sure that you're aware there's three strategies in looking at a price. It's putting it above the market to sort of test the market. And that's the worst for us. I've got ouch there. So if you talk to somebody and they say, we really don't have any desire to move, so this is why you're asking them why they want to move. If they're just saying, well, the market seems to be going up and we'd just sort of like to see what we could get, we might sell if we can get a really, really good price. And that's kind of the worst situation to be in for you, because they have very little motivation if indeed they're accurate. And let me mute the microphones there since someone is sneezing. Gesundheit there. Sorry about that. I should have muted the microphones there. There we go. So now we're good to go. Hopefully everybody can still hear me at this point. So above the market, you may decide not to take a listing like that if they're way high above the market. You might, as a newer agent, because it gets you some advertising out there and that commitment to you that you've got a sign in somebody's yard. So you might, but if you're a really busy agent, the last thing you need to have is a house that's on the market for 180 days, expires, and you didn't sell it because the owner priced it way too high. So the one that we really like is to put it in the market to attract reasonable offers within the days on the market, and we'll talk about those other parameters. And then the third is if somebody's highly motivated, some distress. Again, we went through a period of time for several years where there were a lot of distress sales, where people lost jobs, values dropped. They were trying to avoid short sales and foreclosures. That still can happen. Or somebody might be highly motivated that I got a new job and we're moving to California and I need to sell my house in 3 months. So yeah, I want to move this along. So the key, of course, is what are the seller's motivating factors? Price is obviously a consideration. Timing, as I just mentioned, is another consideration. And one of the things that Buffini and the Peak Producers recommends is have like a year-long big calendar and take it with you. Sharon, have you done that in any of yours? I haven't either, but I think it's a cool idea. Have like a big, big size, 11 by 17 or bigger, full year calendar with the month by month on it. And you talk about them. So why are you moving? Oh, you want to get Johnny and Sally into new schools. And when does that start? August 1. Okay, so you mark on the calendar, August 1, school starts. How long would you like to have been in your new house before Johnny and Sally go to school? 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Okay, so we have to move in. So you work backwards. So closing, possession, purchase contract. Now we need to, so that's the buy side. And so now we need to look at the sell side to tie that together. Oh gosh, we needed to have put your house on the market, given the average days on the market is 90 days here. We needed to have put your house on the market 30 days ago if your house falls into that average category. So we may need to be a little bit more aggressive to get your house sold in 60 days to meet your time frame. So does that make sense? So you're using that big calendar and you draw the line, through and circle the dates. I love that concept. I haven't done it. But, obviously, family considerations, lifestyle security are things that come out from your questions that you're talking to these people in conversation about, which you keep in mind is their big why. We talk about the big why a lot with buyers. There's the big why for sellers also. So, all right, let's dig down a little bit more and talk about the CMA, preparing and winning it. Some of this stuff is fairly obvious, especially to those of you who've been in the business for a while. But basically, the elements of a comp are the physical aspects. First of all, the number of bedrooms, does it have a basement, fireplaces, numbers of gas, two-car garage, all that basic stuff that as you're newer in the business, you'll be looking at all those different things in your MLS system and make sure that you get that house, when you search for something, make sure that it is as comparable, exact as possible to the house in question, the subject property. Number two, size and age. Obviously, that's much easier to do if you're in a subdivision kind of a situation. Number three is location. You all know, we all know that the three elements that go into how quickly and how much a house sells for are location, price, and condition. So we've got a few more things here. When we talk about location here, when you're doing a comp initial, you're obviously in a location physically within a certain distance or a subdivision. What we're talking about here in the elements of a comp are what I call a micro location. Is it a corner lot? Does it back up to the Walmart or the interstate or something like that? Is it on a pond? And then number 4, of course, what's the condition? The problem, and you'll run into clients, potential clients, sellers and buyers, who will talk about, well, Zillow said my house is worth $800,000, and it may be in the market worth $300,000. Zillow is probably not that bad, but everybody looks at those kinds of things and those Zestimates and Trulia idiocies, or whatever they call them on Trulia. The problem with those is that those computer algorithms only focus on the first element. Remember, the first element is, first element is the physical attributes, number of bedrooms, basement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's all that Zillow and Trulia can look at. They may be able to look and compare size. It's 2,400 square feet and it's 15 years old. They probably include that. But they cannot look into the micro location from a computer algorithm. They can't look into the condition, even if they look at photographs from when it sold before. All they have, therefore, is information, and it's very basic information. What we have, and I say this to potential clients, what we have is knowledge. We have knowledge because we can get into the houses. We can bring the personal knowledge of walking, looking, touching, and smelling these comparable properties. If they're on the market, if they're sold, you may not be able to do that. But that's the key, where we take it much further than anything that you can find on Zillow or Trulia or any of those computer algorithms. So looking at the comps again, comp means comparable, which ideally means as close as possible to identical. Obviously, that makes common sense. That's not as easy as you may think. Obviously, in a tract or subdivision home area, that's going to be a bit easier. Tracts and subdivisions, if they're of any size at all, there's relatively fewer layouts, whether it's a single floor plan, 3 bedrooms with no basement, or whether it's 2-story, 4-bedroom, whatever. You can pretty quickly find in a decent sized subdivision some pretty close comparables. So that then means that condition and location become even more crucial. If there's going to be any differentiation, which there may not be, but if there's going to be any differentiation on the subject house that you're talking to your potential clients about. So going out, walking around with them, looking at their condition, asking them what upgrades and updates they've done is absolutely crucial. And no fake chrome toilet paper holders do not really add value. I'm sorry. So you'll have to have some of those discussions. But their backyard and the location. What's the house behind it look like? Is it run down, and is there 3 cars on blocks in the yard behind them? That's going to make a bit of a difference for people. So eyes and ears and nose on site. That's the crucial thing, and that's why it's important to do this 2-step process, where before you've gone out and you've made your whole pitch, without really knowing what you want to recommend as a market range for this house. You can't really know that until you've gone out and seen their house. No matter how many pictures you've looked at, no matter how many upgrades they said they've done, you can't really do that. So you can shoot yourself in the foot by doing a single-step process approach if you're pushed into that. So be very careful with that, especially as a newer agent. So again, finding the comps, we look at 4 categories. Active in the market. Again, this is, for those of you who've been in the business, this is, you've been doing it this way. Active in the market, under contract, and active on the market now, we have a lot of active with contingency categories as well. So you want to include those also in anything that's listed as active. Active and with contingencies, pending or under contract, however your MLS calls it, sold in as short a time as possible. So if you go back 6 months in a neighborhood and there's 47 houses that have sold, go back 3 months. If there's still 23 that have sold, maybe narrow your physical area, or go back 1 month if it's that active an area. So the key is to get a handful of houses, and then for the CMA you can pick 3 or 4 or maybe 5 houses for the CMA. And then we also look at expired and withdrawn, because that tells us something about, we look at this house, you can tell from the pictures, it expired. It was actually on the market for a year. It expired. It was clearly priced too high. And look at these pictures. You can see blah, 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 blah. So that's going to help us a little bit as well. So the next step in thinking about the comps, once you found those comps, now an older neighborhood or a farm out in, Tipton somewhere, wow, that's a little tougher to comp. Obviously, you're not going to be doing something that's within half a mile of it. That's a whole nother ballgame. Comping properties, $1 million type properties that are sort of off by themselves somewhere, as opposed to being in Hamilton proper, where there's a number of $1 million properties. Those are going to be a little bit tougher. Those things you might even want to recommend the person get an appraisal on if it's really, really difficult to comp that one. So, but anyway, as we dig down into the comps, you've got some homes picked out. Then you're going to be looking at, number one, what's the average price for those that are active on the market? What's the average price for those that have gone under contract? And of course, that's still the list price. And what's the average price for the ones that have sold? And what's the average relationship between sold price and the list price? When the market is hotter or a neighborhood is hotter, that might be 97, 98, 99%. So that's going to tell us something. If you've had to go back 8 months to find 3 sold comps in an area, and the relationship on those 3 comps is 92%, that tells you that that's a fairly slow market. You can present that to the people you're dealing with. So the sold price to list price ratio, and then last, the price per square foot. Price per square foot, some agents are using that more and more. Some people don't particularly like that. You have to be careful with it. I personally recommend using price per square foot as sort of a check and balance. Some agents lead with that. Well, your house is, if you price it at that, it's $112 a square foot. On all the comps were 106, so we should price yours at 106. Well, I look at it sort of using that as the back end. We've come up with a price here of $180,000, which is $112 a square foot. You've done these additions and so forth to that may support that price. Let's keep in mind that the average sale price has been 106. The average of those that are currently on the market is 110. So you're a couple dollars above that. Do you feel comfortable with that? I think that maybe that's okay, but let's check it, whatever. So use that as a sort of, I like to use that as more of a check and balance than sort of a leading indicator for things, the price per square foot. So preparing and winning, the CMA, moving on then, as you begin to look at those conditions that they've done, those updates and things, obviously the first thing you're looking at, finishes and updates. Kitchens and bathrooms, of course, still remain huge, huge factors in in the market's mind, let's say. So if the people have got nice granite counters and beautiful upgraded things in the kitchen and stainless steel appliances, that may add some value. Same with bathrooms. If they've got a nice updated bathroom, that's going to attract more people to look at the house, number one, when they see those photos, because that's very desirable features. And hopefully it will attract people to make an offer on that house first, as opposed to another one down the street. But it may or may not add the money that they put into it. Probably won't yield back all the money they put in. But that's a main thing to consider. On the other side, if you've got a house, as I have a listing that is closing in a couple of weeks down in Fountain Square, beautiful 1915 house where the owners admittedly had done allowed some deferred maintenance to take place on some things. They had done an update in their kitchen, which was nice, but it was not all the way to granite. They did not have stainless steel appliances. So we had to price the house accordingly. We have it under contract. They're very pleased with the price. But had they spent some more money on doing some of those things, we would have priced it a lot differently than where it was. But they financially were not in a position to spend a lot more money on the house. And so, but anyway, but those condition things, either plus or minus, have to be taken into mind. Finishes and updates. And then, of course, the lot configuration. We've talked about that. Are they on a corner lot? Most people in most markets consider a corner lot not quite as attractive because it can be an odd configuration. Some corner lots may be beautiful, but many times people corner lot is a slight negative. And then what's the street noise and the traffic? Again, looking at those micro location aspects of it. Is it on a busy street with traffic lights and 4 lanes of traffic that gets a lot of traffic during rush hour? And do you have toddlers? Wow, is this a house that would be attractive to families with small kids? That's going to be a little bit of a negative there. Can you see the Walmart or smell the paper mill? And more these days, can you walk to Starbucks? One of the things that we have at our websites and various things are these walk scores where you can go in and take a look at the house that the address of the house that you're looking at listing, and you can call up the walk score. If it's a sort of an urban type area where that would be important. Many suburban areas, that's not a consideration, but you can look at it anyway. We can also look at drive times for people and tell them that, gosh, your location is 45 minutes from downtown, so you're not going to be really attractive to people who are working downtown, which is a different demographic and a different price point probably. So moving along, the key is to help the seller understand that the price that we're going to be talking about here is not my price. It's not my company's price, it's the market's price. It's the buyer's price. It's not just the buyer alone, but how will the buyer view the house? There will be negotiation. You obviously have a say in how much you want to sell the house for. But what we look at when we're looking at these comps here is what will the market tell us based on the same comps that all the buyer agents will be showing their clients. This is all public knowledge. What would the market tell us would be an appropriate price for this house? So then you get back to that strategies. Do you want to price it above the market just to test it like you had initially said? Or given that you want to get Johnny and Sally into school in September, shouldn't we price this house in the market and maybe toward the lower end of the market because we're 30 days behind schedule already? I mean, this is the way you tie all this stuff together. But the key is that the buyers will be seeing the same stats. You may have to have that conversation that's a repeat of the one when you ask them initially, how much do you think the house will sell for? 225. Well, the market would say it will sell for 210 or 200. So you're going to have to then say, so why do you think the house will sell for 225 when the statistics here are telling us that the market would say 200 would be the right price? Most people don't have an answer for that. Obviously, you have to be careful in your manner and attitude not to make them feel like you're putting them in a box or anything. But the key is, my goal is to sell your house as quickly as possible so you can, this is where you go back to your big why. So you can get Johnny and Sally into that school. Do you still want to sell to meet that goal or to move to Texas or whatever it might be? That's where the big why can come in. But the key is that the market will show us, especially if we price the house a little too high, the market will show us. So sometimes you may say, you know what, I'm agreeable to price your house a little bit higher than I think the market would say. Let's put it on the market, and if we don't have an offer in 2 weeks, given your time frame, let's lower the price by $10,000. And you put that right into the purchase agreement, that it's automatic that the price will be lowered if you don't have an offer within that time frame. So you set up a schedule. And if you end up dealing with somebody who you really feel is looking at a very unreasonable price and is also sort of personality-wise showing you that they're not going to be very reasonable to work with, maybe you just say, I'm sure there's other agents out there that would be happy to list your house at this price. If you'd like me to refer or recommend somebody, I'll be glad to do that. So, and you don't put yourself in that position. As newer agents, you're probably going to want the experience of working with somebody, but it could be a headache. So be alert to the timing and signals from the feedback that you get. And you talk about if we're going to lower the price in a couple of weeks, if we don't have an offer. One of the main things, hopefully you get showings. If you don't get any showings, that's a huge, awful situation. If you get showings and then feedback, you need to make sure that the feedback is very direct and that you are very clear with your seller clients about that feedback and what it means. So again, the payoff, setting the price, that's the goal of all this. And what I always recommend is don't ever say, so I think we should price this house at $215. Give them a range. And remember to use that phrase, the market would say. The market would tell me that the market would think that this house would probably be best priced between $210 and $225. So whatever it might be, or 500 and 550, whatever the right range would be, that's a reasonable range. And then close your mouth. That can be very difficult for many of us to stop talking, but that's the key. Give them a range and let them talk next. In negotiation, oftentimes the first to speak loses. That's one of those basics of negotiations 101 when you've made a point. Close your mouth. So give them a range. Don't just say, I think such and such. So again, probably 75% of the time, this is going to be a collegial, comfortable operation. If you've presented yourself as a pro and presented all this information, most people they're probably going to say, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. So you may not have that happen. So here's a way to deal with that. Buffini Peak Producers, they talk about the listing agent love-o-meter. And when you've won successfully, you've gotten an agreement, you've made a great listing presentation, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about that in a minute too. And they've said, yes, let's list a house with you. The love-o-meter, the love axis is way up here, and the time meter is going out this way. Well, you don't have any showings. The love-o-meter goes down and down. You don't get an offer. The love-o-meter is going down and down over time. So I've occasionally talked about this with people and have said, I'd rather disappoint you now than later. When you've invested time in hiring me to sell your house, when I'm not sure that this is the price that the market will support here. So I think it'd be better for you to list with somebody else. I mean, it's difficult to do that, but I'd rather disappoint you now by being honest with you about where I really believe the market is showing us, not me, where the market is showing us the price should be, rather than disappoint you in 3 or 4 months when we've had very few showings and bad feedback and no offers. Because starting high and lowering the price is not an effective way to maximize the timing of the offer and the amount of an offer. So that's the CMA basically. It's more of an art than a science. One of our very experienced agents who probably has an average sale price here of $500,000 or $600,000, homes in Carmel, where she's been very active for a number of years. When we talk about doing CMAs, she goes, oh, I hate them. They still drive me nuts. There is unfortunately nothing that is black and white. Put A here and B there, and it tells you the answer. So, as you're newer in the business, practice. Pick one of our listings. Do a CMA on it. Then either go to your manager or your mentor or me, or go to the listing agent and say, hey, I just did a comp on this, and I keep coming out that this house should be priced higher or lower. Would you take 5 minutes and can I buy you a cup of coffee? And would you look at this and show me where I'm going wrong on your pricing? And they may say, no, you're absolutely right. The seller insisted on this or whatever, or the seller's motivated, etc. So get some feedback. Just do them over and over so you get comfortable looking at what those elements of the comp really are and then how to process that and come up with that range. So let's talk about Toolkit CMA for a minute and move on to the sort of the listing presentation. This would be step 2 of the 2-step process. Again, step 1, you go out, you talk about the 7-step blueprint I recommend, you look at the house, you make lots of notes, then you've got all the details on the conditions so you can come back and set a meeting, whether it's a week later, 3 days later, or the next day or whatever. So then you want to have this is where you do the more formal presentation. I recommend being very careful not to print out a notebook presentation and walk through it page by page, seeking to find hopefully something that strikes your fancy that they might be interested in. So some of the questions initially, what do you want to know the most about? Even as you're walking around that first step after you've talked to them on the phone and set it up and ask them questions, confirm those. So now you told me that you're most interested in hearing about my marketing program or how I keep in touch with you, the communication side of things. So find out what's important to them. You said you wanted to know about our company's website and search capabilities, blah, 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 our relocation. So confirm those. And those are the elements that then when you go back for the second time, you focus on those. And I made notes that you were most interested in this, so I want to make sure that these are the 3 items you'd like me to cover in the time we have together today. And we do have an hour. Remember always to ask them how long you've got. There's nothing worse than reaching the climax of your wonderful presentation and they say, could you finish this up in a couple minutes? We got to take Johnny to soccer. So you don't want to do that. So you need to know how much time and confirm again, what are the important things that you want to talk about. I always like also to ask, what decision would you like to make at the end of our time together? Hopefully they say, well, I'd like to finalize my decision on listing the property. Remember also that in one of those initial conversations when you're asking questions, one of the primary ones to ask is, will you be talking to other realtors? It's great if they say no. If they say yes, then say, I'd like to be the last one you meet with. That's a key to being successful. I've had many agents, many people will just say, oh, okay. Sort of like, and I then don't go on to it. I just like to be last. I just don't bother with it. Some people will say, why do you want to be last? And I'll say, well, I've been doing this for 40 some years. I've made presentations to, IBM and major corporations and things like that. It's very clear that the last person in the door has an advantage because the prospect who's been receiving other information now has seen some other things and can ask that third person questions that they might not have asked me if I was first or even second. So I'm in a position to be much more responsive to what your concerns really are, and that gives me an advantage, frankly. Most people, when I've said that to them, they go, that's kind of cool. I've had a couple people when I've said I want to be last, they've said right out, they've said, you are good. So they understand that process. Now, so something to try to be the last one in, so you want to try to close them. When you know that you're the last one, you don't have to say, well, you're meeting with anybody else yet? Or, gosh, when do you want to make a decision? Oh, gosh, I'll check back with you in a couple of days. That's the worst position to be in. The goal is to be able to say, did I tell you everything that you wanted to hear today? So, Toolkit CMA, there's obviously the physical aspect of you meeting with them, talking with them, developing rapport, because most people like to do business with people they feel comfortable with. I'll say that rather than like. I think it's people that they feel comfortable with. So Toolkit CMA is a great way to deliver the other side of this, which is the written stuff. I mean, it's important that we do give people some written stuff to hang on, even if they don't really look at that much of it. God, that's just another thing that's a sort of check. Did they have a big proposal? Oh yeah, they had a really big presentation package. It was really cool. So what I recommend, frankly, is never, ever sit down with a great big book presentation and walk through it page by page by page. Don't do that. What you've found out already, what's the most interest to them, I recommend setting up through Toolkit CMA or somewhere else our presentation customized to their house, a picture of their house on it, et cetera, and we're going to walk through doing some of this stuff here. I send that to them usually after the first step walkthrough, maybe even before that. If it's going to be a while before the first step walkthrough, because I want them to remember me and sort of see something from me. If I'm meeting them the next day for the walkthrough, I might send it to them afterwards because I've got some continuing information. I do as a PDF and I send it to them and I call them up and say, I'm going to send you our listing presentation. It's a lot of paperwork. I don't usually print it out. If you don't mind, I'm going to send it to you as a PDF. You can take a look at it and read it on your tablet or whatever. Thumb through it. Take a look. If you have any questions or want to know more about something, let me know, and then we'll cover that when we have our time together. So I'm not wasting your time talking about things you don't care about. Most people like that. They don't want to have their time wasted. So I send it to them that way. So let's get back to the preparation of a Toolkit CMA. If you've not gotten on Toolkit CMA, you can get to it through the BHHS Lead Resource Dashboard. And if you haven't gone to there yet, I'll show you how to do that. You get onto it, Toolkit CMA. You click onto it, and you've got an account there. And step one is to set up your preferences and your profile. You can put your own photograph in there, of course, which you want to have your photograph on these presentations. So it's got all kinds of things. And I'm not going to go into great detail today, but Michael or I would be more than happy, or Kent would be more than happy for you newer agents to walk through this, a hands-on session, step by step for you. So step two is to select a presentation to customize. And you can see on here there are a number of demo PDFs that you can pull up and take a look at. It's hard to see here, but there's basically a listing presentation up there, which is the standard BHHS corporate one, which is pretty good. We have one that is a custom listing presentation. I've told this to a number of people. When we first transitioned to Berkshire Hathaway a few years ago, we discovered one of the home services owned companies, a big company in San Francisco, had spent a ton of money and put together a customized listing presentation that just looked so much sharper. And I called up their marketing director and talked to her, and she said, sure, you can have it. So we spent the money to reconfigure it to Indiana and all this kind of stuff. So it's available. It's called the Custom Listing Presentation. And you can take a look at that as a demo and see what's included in it to see which one you like. But I really encourage everybody to get in and play with these and customize them. So take a look at the presentation. You can customize your cover letter for each one of the CMA situations and presentations you're doing. So thanks to discuss the marketing of, not your property, you wouldn't say, of 123 Elm Street. I love the fact that it's right next to the Starbucks and the used car dealership, whatever it might be, so that you're customizing it for them. And in your own words. So you don't just have to use this, but this has got started out for you. And this ties into everything, so it's right with that presentation when you send it to them. Here's a copy of the cover sheet of the BHHS custom listing presentation. I think it's very, very sharp, not too overly cluttered. And of course, one of the things you can do is put a picture of the client's home actually on the next page with their address and all kinds of information as well. But this is sort of the theme of it that I really, really like, because it uses so much of that Cabernet color, which I personally think is a really rich color that most companies don't. I don't think of another company that uses that color. So getting into the presentation itself, the next step is to select and customize the elements for your own listing presentation you want to use. There are a ton of pages. I think there's something like 80-some pages that are available. You're not going to want to send all these to them. So walk through these, spend some time, look at them, and check off the ones you want to include and uncheck the ones you don't want to include, and call it, my template, or whatever you want to call it, so that you can then go to that template, bring it up, and then customize it and resave it as 123 Main Street and use it for each house. But you don't have to then go through and pick and choose each time, although you can add or delete depending on the circumstances. You'll see in here in some markets in the country, they use a different sort of segmented approach to pricing. We don't use that in Indiana at all, so just go right, but don't even try to figure out what it is. I still haven't really made sense of it and don't think it's a great thing. So, but take a look at the pages you think are the most important. Remember, you're sending this as a PDF that people can flip through on their iPad or whatever. So I'm a fan of including maybe more than less, but don't be ridiculous, on it. So set up your template, and then when it comes time to do a specific presentation for somebody in this, the beautiful thing about this, it is MLS integrated with all of our MLSs, each of the different MLSs in the state of Indiana. So you need to go in and choose which MLS you're on. Here you can see I've got the drop box there set for my bor, and you want to get listings from the MLS system. And then you go on and you set up your search criteria just like you would through the MLS. Now, if you're newer in the business, this can get a little bit cumbersome. What you might want to do is, first of all, do a CMA in your MLS that you're perhaps more familiar with, sort of come up with some properties there, and then come into here once you've got sort of those things set up that are what you want it to be, and you fine-tuned it to eliminate, let's eliminate this. There's too many of those that have two-car garage or whatever it might be. So once you've got those criteria fine-tuned, then you can come into here and not have to be playing with this one and redoing it over and over, because this one's a little bit more cumbersome. But the cool part of it is that this is what it yields for you. This is one of the pages that shows up in your presentation, and there's a number of pages that can be produced from this, and I'm sorry, I should have shown one of the other ones. This is sort of the summary page, and you can see it's again got that theme of the BHHS custom presentation with the colors and everything and the logo, and you can pick and choose. You can actually put a sheet or multiple sheets for each of the homes, showing the details of each of the homes. You can do several homes to one sheet where you can get the picture and various things like that. And so that's pretty good to include, and you can pick and choose those. And they look very, 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 very sharp and very, very professional. And they've got all the basic information that you'd want. So it's right in the presentation for you. So one of the best ways to use this is when I send them this presentation, either before I've done step one or after I've done the step one, but before I meet with them, I don't include this in the presentation the first time. I will probably print these pages out and take them in a nice folder and then email it to them as well as a PDF separately. So although it fits beautifully within the overall presentation, or you could send them the whole presentation after you've done with this in the midst of it as well. But so you don't want to send this without walking through it and talking with them. But again, it just fits so beautifully within that presentation. So when you do go back for that second meeting to talk about the value, to try to win the listing, hopefully you've already heard from them. What are the key elements that you want to hear from me? Okay, you want to hear about my communication. You want to hear about how many homes I've sold. You want to hear about whatever it might be, how we take care of this or that, so that you address those questions for them, and then come to the price and close your mouth when you've given that range. Hopefully they say a number that you like and say, that's fabulous. Shall we fill out the contract? Because that's the last piece. You've agreed on the price. If you have any more questions, let's fill out the contract. So the goal is using highly professional and impressive knowledge-based CMA versus Zillow and Trulia or anything like that. So you're going to have to explain all that to them. And this shows your knowledge, raises the platform of your professionalism of knowing things about the market. And part of the knowing things is you'll want to go out and preview other active homes that are going to be in your comps. Part of it also is hanging around other agents who sell homes in that market that you're in, Fishers, Broad Ripple, Meridian, Kessler, wherever it might be, and hearing them talk so that when you're at that listing presentation, you could say, yep, I was just talking with the agent that sold a house 2 doors down the street there, and they told me that such and such and so and so. That raises, even though you didn't sell it, it raises your platform of professionalism. So that skill, coupled with habit of strategically implementing and leveraging your market analysis as part of your process, not the sole thing, even though sellers oftentimes want that, coupled with the attitude of knowing you stand on solid ground and a platform of winning, it's going to give you more confidence and help you grow your business while making your life easier because you're having to do less work and print out less paper and punch fewer holes in things. So, any questions on the art of the CMA? There's a lot more to covering, obviously, the presentation, and we've got another class that talks in more detail about the way the listing presentation and working with sellers as well. So, any questions from anybody out there? No questions out there. Any questions in the room? Sharon?
I always think it's helpful to go armed with your first appointment with, and it's hard to copy it off the computer, the Zestimate. I call it the estimate. Yeah. Because they're going to know what it is, so you may as well look at it.
True, that's a good point. Yeah.
So I think you need to look up the Z estimate and compare it to, okay, here's our Z estimate. Here's what the market or the neighborhood price or average price is. Based on that, here's what your price would be square footage. Here's what the appraised value is. Now what's left for us to determine is what the actual value is. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm here today, to get some knowledge about the house and see what it's like and give you the accurate price. But I think that's handy because sometimes, and the other thing, the day you go for the listing, like 1 minute before you walk out the door, you really need to run an updated search to see
good point.
What's listed in the neighborhood. There's so many times they say, well, what's that house listed across the street? And I thought, shoot, I worked on this market on Friday before the weekend, and now someone's listed a house across the street. I don't have that information. I didn't see the sign when I was walking into the house.
Right. Sharon's made it, for those of you who couldn't hear all of that, Sharon's made a couple of great comments and suggestions. Number one, make sure that you are aware of the Zestimate or Z estimate or Trulia and all those things, because the prospective client will probably know those. So don't be shocked and surprised. So know those. And Sharon also made the comment that make sure right before you walk out the door for your appointment with them, to do probably the second step where you're talking about setting the price and winning the listing. Make sure you've done a quick search just in case a new house just came on the market that morning across the street and you didn't see it 2 days ago when you did your last CMA, and you go out and have to say, I don't know. You don't want to do that. So good thoughts there, Sharon. Thank you. Any other comments or questions or thoughts from anybody? A lot to this. Thanks so much, everybody, and we will post this up at the YouTube channel shortly, and appreciate everybody's attention. And don't hesitate to ask questions and share your own experiences, what you've learned, what you like, what works for you, and different ways to do this, because there's more than one way to skin the cat on this kind of stuff. So thanks so much.